Many years ago, I used to work night shift at a hotel in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. During the season, it wasn't so bad, mostly just families and stuff. We also had security on site then too. However, in the off-season, the winter months, it was quite different. The cheap weekly rates we'd offer attracted a lot of creepy people. The idea was supposed to be to make money in the off-season by renting to what's known as snowbirds, older retired people who come down to the beach for a month or more during the winter. Things didn't always work out that way though. The cheap rates made it possible for a less than desirable element to become long-term residents at the hotel. In my time working there, I've discovered more than my fair share of meth labs, broken up physical assaults, and even more during the winter months. Working third shift would cause me to meet some very interesting people. The colder weather meant homeless people would often wander in, get warm, and grab a cup of free coffee. I wasn't supposed to let them, but I didn't want to be cruel. I would let them grab a cup of coffee and get warm for however long they wanted, as long as they didn't cause any trouble to anyone. As you might imagine, night shift in the winter made for some pretty crazy and sometimes creepy stories. I have quite a lot actually, but this one is one that stands out, mostly because it didn't end well for me. I'd had a pretty great night up until the point this happened. I had gone to see an indie wrestling show with my best friend before work. In fact, I had agreed to come in an hour early the next night for the young lady that worked second shift, in exchange for her working an hour late for me on this night, so I could enjoy that wrestling show. Ironically enough, I even met Terry Funk that night, a wrestling legend known for his hardcore and bloody matches. Little did I know, I was about to experience that kind of violence for real. I was supposed to arrive there at midnight, due to her working over an hour for me. I normally came in at 11 p.m., so that was about right. I counted the register, and she briefed me on her shift as to what happened as per usual. As she was leaving, my friend, who we'll call Andrew, pulled up out front. He worked second shift maintenance at this hotel, and 2 other hotels our company owned. He would regularly stop by after work and go grab us some food. We would play World of Warcraft on our laptops together after eating, if business was slow on a particular day. He was getting my money and order for food, and getting ready to leave. I was excited, telling him how much fun I'd had at the wrestling show, and showing him my Terry Funk t-shirt I was so proud of. I was just walking into the back office to put the shirt up, when I heard the doorbell indicating a customer had entered. It's true what they say. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I had just turned around when I heard someone say something loudly. I couldn't make out what they were saying from where I was though. As I reached the doorway, I saw Andrew fall down in front of me. Next thing I know, a man walked around the corner and smacked me in the head with a short steel pipe in his hand. I staggered in surprise and went down to one knee. The next thing I knew, he smacked me in the head with the pipe again. I could hear the other guy, who I hadn't even noticed was there until this moment, say somebody had gotten away and called a cop. They sprinted out the front door. I was able to get to my feet. I tried to call the police from my phone in the back office, but I was having issues operating it. I slammed it down in frustration. I was hurting and scared, and I was really freaking out. I realized they might come back at any moment, so I locked the door as soon as I could. I didn't know what had happened to Andrew, and that really worried me. I called 911 at about this time, as blood had started pouring down my face. I told the operator we'd been attacked, and we needed an officer and an ambulance ASAP. I then called the other hotel we ran to let the night manager know what was going on. He thought I was messing with him at first, because when we got bored, we would often prank each other. Finally, though, I convinced him I was not joking. The cops and the ambulance pulled up as I opened the door. It was at about this time I found out that after they'd sucker punched him and knocked him down, Andrew was able to jump over the desk and escape, just as a cop happened to be driving by. We flagged down for help. I ended up in the hospital ER, where I had to have multiple staples and stitches in my scalp, and they gave me morphine for the pain. I had no way to get home after being treated. but the doctors and nurses took pity on me and paid for a cab home. My plan was simply to go back to work. It was December and Christmas was coming. I had 3 kids and I needed all the hours I could get. When I got back to the hotel, the IT guy Ted was there with his wife Barbara, who also worked the front desk. She was shocked to see me. She thought I would still be in the hospital. I thought in the moment that I'd only been hit in the head once after being punched, but the video which Ted was pulling for the police showed a very different story. Apparently, I was really out of it because after I went down to one knee, the 2 men had begun hitting me multiple times, over and over again. In the video, I kept trying to grab the pipe and get up for some reason. I don't even remember that, but I guess that was how I got to my feet. The man kept punching me and hitting me in the face with the pipe. That was until his friend told him Andrew had gotten away and called the cops. The 2 of them then ran out. I was given a room at the other hotel we owned and took a week off to heal. They switched me over to another property on night shift for a month, just in case those guys were after me in particular. We never found out why they chose to attack me so viciously. The police suspected it might be a failed strong-arm robbery due to Andrew slipping away and me not going down, but it really shook me up not knowing. Even though I was at our other hotel when I came back to work night shift, I was extremely nervous. Every time the door chimed, I tensed up. I couldn't afford to quit though. As I said, I have 3 kids I'm supporting. They never caught the guys as far as I know. A detective stopped by about 2 months later when I was working second. He showed me several mugshots and asked me if any of them looked familiar, but I'd never gotten a great look at them as it all happened so fast. The video was not of the best quality, unfortunately. Even so, 2 of them looked very familiar to me. I pointed them out, and he asked me how sure I was. I told him honestly it was about 85% or so. Then he screamed at me and asked me if I wanted someone to go to jail for attempted murder on 85% certainty. I was stunned into silence. I was the victim here being attacked for no reason, and he was yelling at me like it was my fault I was too busy being assaulted to get a good look at them. I no longer work at that hotel or on the night shift, and I'm glad because this is just too dangerous an area. This happened a few years ago. My aunt and uncle own a restaurant, and one Saturday they were moving from their old location to a new one. My aunt, uncle, future husband who was my boyfriend at the time, cousin, and about 10 other people who were mostly employees were helping the move since there was a bunch of large equipment to take over. We were all at the old restaurant packing things away, tying them down, when we ran out of ratchet straps. I offered to drive to my parents' house, which was about 30 minutes away, to get some more straps from my dad. Because everyone else was busy though, I had to go all by myself. On the way back, I got a call from my aunt saying they were all going to take a load to the new location and to meet them on the way there. I didn't know how to get to the new place since I'd never gone there before, so I pulled over into a parking lot to put in the address. From the road, you weren't able to see the parking lot at all because of all the trees surrounding it. Something odd that I didn't notice at the time was that this was a sunny weekend day, but there were no other cars in this parking lot. I pulled into the parking spot and immediately grabbed my phone to put in the address. For whatever reason though, I didn't put it into park like I normally do, which means the doors were left locked. Less than a minute after I looked down, I heard and suddenly felt a huge hit against the side of my car. I remember looking up in surprise, only to see a man standing there. For so long, I thought it was odd how I couldn't even see the color of his eyes. That's how big his pupils were. It's important to know that I was in a small SUV, so we had to bend over to look in the window. A second later, he was pulling the door handle so hard I thought he was going to rip it off like a bear or something. I was confused as to why the door wasn't unlocked as well, like it normally would be when I'd parked in a parking spot. The man got very visibly upset that the door wasn't opening, so he began to smash the side of his fist against the window, swinging his whole body over and over. Getting progressively more pissed, he moved to the door handle of the back seat. At this point, I was so scared of him getting into the car that I grabbed and unsheathed the camping knife I had in my door. When I looked back at him, he stopped attacking my car, saw the knife, and smiled. I think it was right then that I realized he did not want money. He didn't want anything sexual. He wanted to kill me. I knew that if he got in my car, it was going to be all over for me, even with this small knife. He was way bigger than me, and he was smacking the car so hard I was amazed the windows were even holding up. I guess I'd gotten comfortable with the idea he wouldn't be able to get the doors open. But after he continued bashing the back window a few more times, the car began to rock back and forth as he moved to the trunk. The panic got worse because I knew the doors weren't opening for some reason, but maybe the trunk still would. He smashed against the back window with both of his balled-up fists, and I was afraid the window was going to crack. He was yelling something I couldn't understand. It was right at that moment I realized I hadn't actually put the car in park. I could slam it in reverse. I dropped the knife in my lap, shifted the gear into R, grabbed the wheel, and slammed my foot down. Honestly, I have no idea if I hit him or if he managed to jump out of the way, and I didn't care either. I didn't look back once. I slipped into drive as I spun around and peeled out of the parking lot. It was my first time ever ignoring a stop sign. I still have no idea why this one particular day at this one time out of all others, I decided not to put it in park. So this all happened when I was about 15 or 16 years old. It was in 2005 or 2006, I think, way before the era of smartphones. My best friend at the time, we'll call her Mona, and I were proper emo kids, and we used to love finding cool locations to take our photos. Because of this, I never went anywhere without my camera, and I used to keep it on me at all times. This will be important later. My parents' garden was pretty big for a suburban house actually. When you were sitting on the patio, you'd have a lawn on one side and a sort of jungle-ish area on the other, with some walkways going through it. I had a really strong intuition when I was younger, and I remember this one particular night when I had Mona sleeping over at my house. My dad was away in a different city for some work, and my mom had one of her friends over that night. I guess we'll call her Sarah. I just remember hanging out with Mona when all of a sudden I was overcome with this extremely bad feeling. I had this sense something was not right. Mona said she felt it too. We rushed to tell my mom and her friend who were sitting outside on the patio. I even told Sarah to not go home that night because I was scared something would happen to her on the way home. I asked my mom and Sarah if they could not stay outside for too long either. They didn't seem really concerned at all, but they agreed anyway, I suppose to humor me, and eventually came inside together. Mona and I sat on my bed for a while, looking at all the photos we'd taken that day on my camera, before I put my camera back in my bag and slid it underneath my bed. Then we went to sleep together. We were suddenly awoken at 4 or 5 a.m. though, by my mom rushing into my room to check if we were okay. Immediately, we could sense something was wrong. She told us someone had broken into the house during the night. We all started looking around to see if they had taken anything. At first, we couldn't find anything missing, but then, to my horror, I discovered that only my camera had been stolen, and from my bag as well. The bag was still there, right next to where Mona and I had been sleeping. In fact, not a single other thing was missing or moved. Not my mom's laptop or any of the expensive valuables out lying in the open, which tells me they didn't have time to look for valuables, which meant they must have been looking for this specifically. Perhaps even watching us to see where I'd hidden it, because they knew exactly where I'd put my camera. That creepy feeling we'd had all night was probably the feeling of being watched. I'm guessing whoever this creep was had been hiding in some of the bushes and watching us the entire time. I don't know what creeps me out more, honestly, the fact they were right there watching us, or the fact they were in my room, just centimeters away from us while we slept right through it. I shudder to think what would have happened if they had stuck around longer. It turns out Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch downstairs, so my mom hadn't set the alarm that night. Sarah, me, and Mona all slept through the entire thing. Lucky for us, my mom is a light sleeper, and she caught the guy in our room and screamed at him to get out of the house. My mom is a total badass, and that's not the only time she scared a burglar off. The experience taught me to always trust my intuition and to always set the house alarm, no matter what the situation. If you were to ask me if I believed in the paranormal, I'd tell you that I'm on the fence about it. If someone were to tell me a house is haunted, I wouldn't believe them unless I myself experienced something out of the ordinary. I believe that creepy things do happen, but I go into situations with the mindset of trying to rule out every possible cause before I come to a conclusion. If I can write something off as just a coincidence or my mind playing tricks on me, then I will, and I'll leave it at that. This experience, though, is a little bit different. I don't know what exactly happened really, and it hasn't happened for a while since either. This night I was on a Discord call with some of my friends. It was pretty late at night, maybe 10 or 11 or so, and I decided I'd start doing my nightly routine and get settled in for the night while on call. I muted myself and went to brush my teeth, got my pillows all set up on my bed, and went to close my blinds by my window. That was when I noticed something odd. There appeared to be a man just standing in the street under a street lamp. I couldn't really make out his face because of the distance, despite nothing really obscuring it. The man was wearing a suit. He wasn't particularly tall, and I don't know what really stood out about him, other than it being odd to see him there so late at night. Something about him was just giving me a really off feeling. I unmuted myself and sat back down at my desk, letting my friends know about this. I was joking about how his Uber was late, or his wife must have kicked him out or something. We all gave him the very creative nickname of Suit Man. After a few moments, I went back to the window to check if the man had moved at all. The man had indeed moved. He was now standing right in front of my cross-street neighbor's backyard gate, which was visible from where I was due to it being located near their garage door. The longer I looked at him, though, I noticed more and more odd things. First of all, he was not facing the gate, and he was standing completely still. Second of all, I noticed he was so still that he hadn't even triggered the neighbor's floodlights, which would automatically come on when someone or something moved nearby. Either that or they'd gone off already. You had to cross over their driveway to get to the gate. So if he'd just moved there, the lights should have been off. At this point, I was really freaked out, but also a little bit intrigued. I decided to grab my phone and try to take a picture of this man. When I turned back to look at where the person had been though, even though I'd only looked away for a few minutes to grab my phone and pull up my camera, the man was already gone into the night. I decided, fuck this, and closed my blinds immediately. I stayed on that voice chat most of the night, since I was now a little bit freaked out still. I didn't want to try going to sleep anytime soon after such an odd encounter. Although all that was pretty creepy in and of itself, the scariest part came after. For a few months after this, I would hear someone whistling while walking down the street at the exact same time of night I'd seen the man each and every day. It stopped recently, and I haven't seen it since, nor have I seen the suit man again, but I'm hoping that will be the end of it. I was a toddler, no more than 3 years old, when my family and I lived in a small rented house in Vermont. There are a few things I remember about it. The spiral staircase, the large field outside, well, my 3-year-old self thought it was quite large at least, and the cold cement floor in my bedroom. The part of the house that I was most strangely drawn to, though, was the basement. I was and still am quite a wanderer, so I didn't really mind being alone. Both of those qualities made the basement a sort of getaway for me. I wasn't allowed to be down there by myself technically, but a handful of times I managed to sneak my way down without anyone else noticing. I remember crawling down the stairs like they were a ladder or something, being overly cautious of falling as I'd done so before. Sometimes while going down, I would hear this mumbling coming from somewhere in the basement, but it was too quiet for anything they said to be discernible. When I got to the last step and turned around, I would see her over in the corner. It was a sort of mannequin with blonde hair and an expressionless face. At least, it seemed to be. All I could think is that this thing looked like the mannequins from JCPenney or perhaps Kmart. I had never once thought this was an odd thing to be there. Some basements have exercise equipment. We had a mannequin. So what? Years later, and living in a different home, I suddenly got the urge to bring this up to my mother. "Honey, why would we have a store mannequin in our basement randomly?" My mother gave me a strange look and laughed. "We've never once owned a mannequin in any of the places we lived in." I was stunned. To this day, I have no idea who that was that I saw in the basement. I just don't know what to make of it.